All right, everybody. Hello and welcome back to the 306 Fantasy Football Podcast. We're here recording on the Sunday evening for our July 13th episode number 52. We got the whole crew together here after a spicy hot weekend here, and we'll see how the fellas made out with the heat, and then we'll get ourselves going into what we're going to call too hot to handle. We got a handful of hot takes in a row here. And we've got the boys. We're going to kind of maybe have a little bit of a rebuttal back and forth to see what side of the coin I guess you want to be on, and what's more likely to happen. So we'll get into that segment in a bit here, but we'll say hello to everybody first. We'll say hello to Armin first. Armin, I know you mentioned you had a wedding this weekend, and unfortunately I could not attend that wedding. I was in Saskatoon, but how was the weekend for you?
Oh, it was fantastic. Few days before the wedding, my wife and I went to Saskatoon ourselves and stayed at the Travel Lodge there and did some water sliding, and it was a blast. Got the little guy down the slide for the first time ever. Couldn't tell if he liked it or not. He kind of had this like in between phase of like, oh, this is kind of cool, but also terrifying. So we'll see in the future what it holds for him. And then the wedding was a blast. We got my mom up to babysit the little guy, and so it was we used it as a date night for the missus and I, and we danced the night away, and it was good. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Then Zach, how about yourself? Actually, you know what, I happened to be able to catch a glimpse of Zach while I was driving through Saskatoon. We were stopped at a lights in what's that area of town called, Zach?
Oh, like Stonebridge.
All of a sudden I'm like, man, it looks like Zach. I look over, we both kind of did a double take and gave each other a look like, oh, hey, it's you. Rolled the window down, did an awkward 15-second conversation, and then we peeled our other ways off the lights. But how was the weekend for you, Zach?
It was good. That might have been the highlight of my weekend, seeing your mug in Saskatoon.
Oh, the awkwardly look over at him. He rolls the window down. He goes, yeah, I thought that was you, that ugly guy in that truck. I was like, yeah, nail on the head. He hit it right there.
You looked like you were definitely feeling it from the night before.
Yeah, it was a tough go. I was in Saskatoon all weekend helping out with my buddy, one of my really good friends. Both of them, the bride and the groom, are both very good friends of mine. So I was there helping out get set up, and I was definitely battling the heat. That was for sure. Like I was just saying, it was Friday was like 39 degrees during setup, and we were in a barn, so it was less than awesome. And then Saturday was a hot one too. So it was a warm weekend, but it was awesome to celebrate. My two friends obviously tying the knot together, and I emceed, so I was nervously going through my speech, and things went well. And actually the bride is going to be emceeing my wedding coming up here right away too. So it's awesome. It's an awesome weekend, but glad to be here talking a little football. So funny, actually, I was just thinking too, like I was going through the calendar, like, okay, yeah, we dropped this on the 13th. By the time we record episode 53, I'll be married too. So we got this episode. Next weekend, we'll have like a little bit of our last minute prep stuff, and then the weekend following, it's the big day. So it's going to be right now between master's classes and wedding prep and all that extra stuff. It's a nightmare. But talking football today is going to be the highlight of my next couple of weeks. That's for sure. At least talking, bring down the stress levels.
We got to say sorry to all the ladies out there who wanted to get in on the 306 fantasy football. The last eligible bachelor is tying a knot.
Yeah, it's pretty good too. Like I would say like two of our big like fans of the podcast too are actually in the wedding party. So might have to get a little 306 picture at the wedding or something like that. I'll be good. Maybe wear the hat at the reception, see how that goes. Excited about that one, but I guess regardless, we can get things going here a little bit. We'll do insiders and headliners. Once again, there's just a couple things to talk about, a few big things, but still we're kind of just waiting in that lull, just waiting for all of the the camp news and stuff to start coming through. But the first one is Terry McLaurin signed an extension worth $71 million over a 3-year extension. So Terry McLaurin, this was kind of expected that he was going to get paid either before the season or sometime throughout the year, because he was going to be an eligible free agent this upcoming year. So Terry McLaurin getting the bag there. And then Baker Mayfield, this one was like, it's been expected for quite some time, but finally it has come to fruition that he has been traded from the Cleveland Browns to the Carolina Panthers. So the I guess the deal ends up kind of working out that they split the financial obligations of his contract, and then in return they also get a conditional fifth round compensation for Baker Mayfield. So we'll talk a little bit about this because I know we're going to talk a little bit more about it later on in the episode. The kind of timing of this worked perfectly. But I know, Armin, we were chatting a little bit about this, and you think that this is Baker's job to win. Is that correct?
Yeah, everyone knows my thoughts on Sam Darnold from my hot takes last year, and I really don't think he's a guy. He's an NFL quality starter in the NFL. His days are behind him here, and I think Mayfield has the upper hand going into camp here for sure in my books, and he's proven to be able to win at the NFL level, whereas old Sammy boy there is I don't think he's ever had a winning season. So
then, Zach, I guess quick question for you too. Obviously comparing previously maybe with your Sam Darnold thoughts, or I guess whoever else could have been starting quarterback. I don't know if you had the rookie Corral kind of pegged in there at all or not, but obviously pre-trade to post-trade here, a hot commodity, a hot topic now is DJ Moore. Do you have him kind of penciled in a similar mindset now, or are you moving DJ Moore up in your rankings a little bit?
For me, I don't think it changes terribly too much. If you're somebody that is a DJ Moore truther and you really believe in that talent, maybe this moves him up a little bit. But if you're somebody that maybe isn't a huge fan of DJ Moore or what have you, this probably doesn't move the needle much one way or the other. I think both quarterbacks have shown that at times they can move the ball. Darnold had a pretty good relationship with Roddy Anderson in New York several years ago. Gave him 1,000-yard season or two, if I'm not mistaken. So both guys have shown the ability to be productive quarterbacks, but I don't think one's a major upgrade over the other, frankly, at this point.
I'll save my 2 cents and my rebuttal for maybe at the end. Like I said, I got a little bit of a spice coming in here, and this might be actually arguably one of my spicier takes I've ever dropped on the pod here. So even Armin at the start said, "Hey, that one's pretty spicy." I'm like, "Hey, if Armin's telling me it's spicy, it might be a little bit out there, but we'll see."
I will say this though, like the compensation that they gave up for Mayfield, a conditional fifth, is considerably better business than what they gave up for Darnold just last year.
Right after too.
Like a sixth, a second, and a fourth for Darnold to replace him 1 year later with a conditional fifth round pick. So much better business this time around. But I do think the best business would have been to draft Justin Fields or Mac Jones when they had the opportunity last offseason.
Just dig that knife a little bit deeper for all those Carolina Panther fans listening at home. Anything else here, fellas? It's that awkward time right now. Insiders and headliners a little bit on the shorter side. There's not a lot to talk about. Once we get to camp stuff, there's going to be going there. But I'm going to throw this one in there. I don't know if you guys seen it on Twitter or not, but I think this is absolutely hilarious. So the oh my goodness, the name escaped me. New York Jets quarterback.
Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson. You see
and
those
his buddy?
tweets? So he broke up with his girlfriend or whatever. So ex-girlfriend kind of sprinkles out into the news out there that was his mom's best friend. Is that what it was?
No, it was his buddy's
mom. Yeah. So either way, if it's either his mom's best friend or his friend's mom, regardless, it doesn't change the story that much. But he ended up having some friendly alone time with we'll call it that, with one of the moms, and somehow that story was kept secret, but the ex-girlfriend dropped it out there. And if you're bored, or if you got some spare time, go on Twitter and go and look at some of these tweets and the conversations that are happening. Oh, there's some really funny comments, especially because he attended BYU, the Cougars, so there's a lot of Cougar tweets, and there's a lot of good fun in some of these tweets out there. So if you're real bored, go out there and look at some, because man, I was giggling all afternoon.
I think my favorite one was the picture of him before the draft in his suit in the bathroom mirror. And then it had superimposed one of his old tweets saying "Go Cougars" from like 3 years ago.
And then
just him
there's like the tweet was like all caps too, wasn't it? Like
yeah, go Cougs or whatever.
yeah, oh so good. A whole new meaning was like some of the captions. Oh yeah, like
Yeah.
oh yeah. If you need a spare moment or if you need a good giggle, that's going to be your source of entertainment for the next 24 hours. But that's how slow news is right now. That's something for us to talk about and have a good giggle. But that was the biggest piece of news that happened over the weekend. So I guess other than the conversation that happened around Darno and Baker. So, but we'll get things going into our next little segment here. We captured this one too hot to handle because it's 3 different hot takes with obviously counter arguments for both, or for both sides of the hot take. So we predetermined a little bit here on who wanted to argue each side based on kind of what side you're leaning on. So I'm going to start this one off. And my hot take is one that's a little close to near and dear to my heart. I'm wearing the hat today. So Detroit Lions talk. It's your daily dose of Detroit Lions. And
just sneak it in, didn't you?
Yeah. I think we went the last episode, we went without it. So at least we got one episode out of the first 52 out of the way. But my hot take on this one is that DeAndre Swift is going to finish as a top 5 running back in fantasy football points this upcoming 2022 season. So a little bit of like prelude to this, I suppose. He's missed a lot of time due to injury. He's on that fringe of getting the injury tag, when people are just ready to write a guy off because he's injury prone all the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of background information, and then I'm going to let Zach and Armin kind of maybe tell you what side of the coin they're on, and then they're going to argue back and forth to see to maybe give you information from both sides of the perspective. So DeAndre Swift is now entering his 3rd season in the NFL with the Detroit Lions. In 2020, he played 13 games. In 2021, he played 13 games as well. In 2020, he had 114 attempts for 521 yards. He had 8 touchdowns and 3 fumbles. In 2021, he had 151 attempts, 617 yards, and he had 5 touchdowns with 2 fumbles. But one thing that Swift is very good at and very capable, which helps in the fantasy perspectives, is he's a good receiving back. In 2020, he got 46 receptions on 57 targets for 357 yards and 2 touchdowns. And in 2021, he had 62 receptions for 78 targets, 452 yards, and 2 touchdowns as well. So there's a lot of consistency throughout his statistics. 13 games played, a couple of touchdowns, some fumbles. It's pretty consistent. But so far throughout the fantasy years, DeAndre Swift, especially this past season in 2021, only playing 13 games. I'm going to go half-point PPR just for argument's sake here. But he played 13 games, and he finished as, sorry, I just had it, and my thing refreshed on me. I apologize.
It was number 19, wasn't it?
15 and half-point PPR scoring. So DeAndre Swift, still in 13 games in 2021, finished as the RB15. So he was highly touted as a premier back during the draft time, and I was very excited when my Detroit Lions drafted him. Unfortunately, hasn't been able to stay healthy. So the parameters around this argument is he's going to miss some time. All running backs miss time. It's very, very seldom that a running back is capable of playing the entire season without missing one game. So when we say running backs have a full season, they're going to miss 1 or 2 games. That's what it is. But obviously only 13 games and 13 games. He's missing around at least 4 to 5 games because obviously we transition to 1 additional game in the NFL season. So we're going to preface that he'll probably miss 1 or 2 games, which is just pretty standard for running backs across the board. But he's going to have a healthy season. So you can't obviously keep the health is baked into obviously the argument here. But he'll probably miss 1 or 2 games. Obviously, Zach is on the or I shouldn't say obviously, but Zach is on the opposition of Swift, and Armand is going to be arguing for Swift. But I'm saying that obviously Zach will utilize probably the injury concerns in there, but we're just prefacing that for this to hit, it needs to be within a healthy season. So I don't know which one of you guys want to go first and maybe start the argument. I guess I've already started maybe talking about Zach, so maybe you want to go first.
Sure. So when this was posted to me, the first thing I did was I reviewed the top 5 running backs from last season. Those were JT, Eckler, Mixon, Najee Harris, and James Conner. I think of those 5, I figure the top 4 are pretty well cemented in that spot. James Conner does worry me a little bit. He's very touchdown dependent, having 15 on the year and only 752 rush yards. But still behind.
Zach, I made that mistake. You were right. He was 19.5 point. He was 15 in full point. So my apologies. So I'm sure that might help your argument even more.
So behind James Conner, who finished 5th overall, there's the likes of Zeke Elliott, Fournette, Kamara, Chubb, Aaron Jones, Damian Harris, Dalvin Cook. That doesn't even go into considering CMC and Derrick Henry, who both missed huge chunks of time, and both, giving them the same benefit of the doubt here that we're giving Swift with health and injury wise. Both of those guys are primed to be bare minimum top 10 talent, I would say, for next season. So it's not that I don't think Swift can do it necessarily, but I think for him to creep into the top 5, he's going to have to dethrone a lot of the running backs that we've come to expect and maybe take for granted as top 5 players at their position. I have a little bit more to say, but I throw it over to Armand for his 2 cents.
Yeah, we'll hear Armand's opening argument here.
It is a spicy take, and I do like a good challenge here. So Zach mentioned the guys in the top 5 that he would have to overtake, and then one name that kind of pops out is Najee Harris. And I think that is kind of the path to Swift becoming that top 5 RB, is how Najee did it last year. Najee wasn't very efficient in his touches. That whole offense wasn't very efficient, but he got a ton of touches. And in that Detroit backfield, when Swift was healthy, he was the guy getting the majority of the touches in that offense. And then you also look at who his quarterback is, and Jared Goff, and how he likes to nickel and dime the ball down the field with his RBs, do those little dump off passes. And that in half point PPR is what I'm going with here, is a great asset to have in your running back. Some other things to kind of take away here is some of the guys ahead of him, like Eckler and Connor, are both having to compete for touches this year. The Chargers drafted Spiller, who I didn't like as a prospect, but he is the opposite type of running back that Eckler is. And I think it shows that Eckler is going to have some touches vultured away from him, especially in the red zone, from the big bruising back of Isaiah Spiller. James Conner has competition coming in to push for touches, and he's also never been a guy that's been reliable to be a huge workhorse guy. He just last year was really efficient with his catches more than anything. You look at his yards per attempt last year, and they were actually awful at 3.7 yards per carry, which is one of the worst in the top 20, tied with Alvin Kamara. So I think there definitely is a path for Swift to be in that top 5 conversation, with his owning of the backfield there, and a lot of RBs not really owning the backfield. It's very rare to see these days in the NFL.
Okay, so I'm going to add another piece of information to this, and then I'll give you guys one more opportunity to try and seal the deal here and see if maybe persuaded me a little bit. So when I was originally kind of toying with this idea, I think RB7 is where I'm comfortably putting him. I think he's going to be RB7 on the season, but to make things a little more spicy, top 5 sounds a little better. So top 5 is where I kind of pegged him, but I'm adding this additional piece of information, and we're going to see where this argument goes from here. So last season, obviously finishing as the RB19 after missing time, he averaged 13.7 points per game. So if I add those points per game to the time he had missed. If he would have played, it would have pegged him just behind James Conner. James Conner finished the season with 239.2 fantasy points, and that would have put him, I think it was 2 points. I just had it right here, 232.7. So he'd have been behind him by give or take 5.2 points, something like that. And he would have been ahead of Zeke, who finished as the RB6. He would have finished ahead of him by about 5.3 points or 6.1 or something along those lines. So obviously we're talking about missing time. And I don't think we'd say DeAndre Swift was an unbelievable back even while he's healthy. He was a good back, but the traits I think that are going to make him successful are what he's going to have to lean on, like was already argued. So adding in that additional time, I think it puts a picture where he could have been if you would have maybe sustained the season or at least as close to the season as possible. He's kind of in that mix. So utilizing some of this information, where's the counter argument there, Zach?
So when he was healthy, and I did make like a similar argument prior to this segment here, I looked up weeks 1 to 11. He was averaging 15.8 half-point PPR points per game, which would have put him at running back 5 on the year last year, I believe. Just using that, point per game average for when he was healthy, not including week 12 where he only played, I think, or where he only totaled 4 rush attempts, leaving that game early. But I think the argument that the half point or the full point PPR settings really benefits Swift is true. But I think going into next year, we may have to approach that with caution and really dial back our expectations. Because Swift went down in week 12, I believe. Correct. And starting in week 13, that is when we saw the sun god emerge in Amon-Ra St. Brown. Starting in week 13, he had 12 targets. Week 14, 12 targets. Week 15, 11. 16, he had 11. 17, he had 11. And 18, he had 10. Each of those weeks, he had about 2 fewer receptions than he had targets. So around 8 or 9 receptions per game over that stretch of time. So, taking in the emergence of St. Brown, them bringing in who I believe was the best receiver in this year's rookie class in Jameson Williams. Granted, he's going to be away until probably late October, early November. Also bringing in DJ Chark, who, even though he's a bit of a depressed fantasy asset at this time, I think he might really fit well into that system and take the top off of defenses. And then they still have Hawkinson. So I think they have really added to their war chest of offensive weapons. And I think they may be in a position where they don't have to lean as heavily on Swift next year as they have had to previously.
Armin, counter rebuttal. Final
all right. So I looking at that chest that they've built up there, I think those receivers eat into each other rather than into DeAndre Swift. If anything, it might actually make DeAndre Swift a little bit more efficient because there's more weapons around him that the defense isn't able to key in on him as much as they might want to. It might also mean that this offense being new and improved, and hopefully the Lions taking a step further, we'll see them in more positive game script more often than they were last year, which should also increase Swift's touches per game and just backfield touches in general. And then I was kind of looking at some of the guys that are ranked in the 2022 rankings on Fantasy Pros. Above him, he's ranked as RB8 on there. And all I have to do is take out 3 guys from that. And I already talked about Eckler. And the other 2 that I want to talk about there are Christian McCaffrey and then Joe Mixon. So CMC, I say it all the time. I don't think he is going to be that top tier fantasy asset anymore. When he's on the field, he produces, but he has been struggling for the last 2 years to be on the field, and his body is just broken down from how many touches he got in his first few years in the league. And then Mr. Joe Mixon there, I just haven't seen enough out of him to convince me that he is going to outproduce Swift in that offense in Cincinnati. They're not a run heavy offense. They like to air raid it, and Mixon kind of gets left on the back burner a lot when you watch their games. He does produce fantasy points, but he's never an elite guy. So if Swift is getting the touches and the opportunity and potentially able to be more efficient due to a better team and better offense in Detroit, I think it's easy to conceive him having a great season this year.
Oh, Armin, Joe Mixon had the third most rush attempts in the league this year. They rely on Joe Mixon. My goodness.
No, in this first half of the season, it was very, very much Joe Mixon territory, but it did dwindle towards the end once they started airing out with Joe Burrow more. Right, his carries reduced pretty significantly. What, the last 4 games?
Yeah, and that playoff run as well. He didn't see very many touches.
The counter argument to that too is that he was catching the ball a lot more too. But regardless, so obviously I'm leaning a little bit more to Armin's side. Zach does make a lot of very good comments and very good counter suggestions. Just, obviously be more cautious. Like we're saying, I think he could be this good. It doesn't mean I'm going to go draft him as the RB5, but I do believe that he has a lot of upside. And the one argument that I think was maybe made to both sides was that the Detroit Lions offense is going to be better. And just in that sense that, a better offense, you want guys that are going to be a part of good offenses. And I see that the Lions are going to be a good offense this year. So when they have one of the top offensive lines in the NFL, so that's where I'm going to want to gravitate to those running backs that have really good offensive lines. But, maybe we all don't agree necessarily on this take, but one thing that we all three can agree on is that 22 Fresh is not only visually appealing, but it's also comfortable to wear and now affordable for you at home as well. So with our partnership with 22 Fresh, you folks at home are benefiting on that one as well. So next time you go to check out on 22fresh.com, insert into that discount code 306 FFB15, and you at home can wear 22 Fresh just the same as us, but you're going to be getting 15% discount on checkout. So your partnership is just as good as our partnership. 306 Fantasy Football is giving you 15% off on your checkout at 22fresh.com. So check them out online and be ready for that big summertime drop coming soon. All right, so now going on to the next one here, we have Zach's take, and Armin and I will be arguing both ends of the stick on this one here. So Zach, why don't you tee us up with the information we need to know, and then we'll get at it.
So my hot take here today is that in 2022, by the sum of their parts, the Kansas City passing attack will be more productive than it has been the past couple of seasons. So in 2021, their top wide receivers were Hill, Pringle, Hardman, and then tight end obviously was Kelsey. This year they have lost Hill and they have lost Pringle, but they've gained Marquez Valdez-Scantling, as well as Juju Smith-Schuster, quickly becoming the all-hyphen team, as well as drafting Sky Moore in the second round. Hill being the obvious loss to their offense. With Hill going to Miami, they are giving up just short of 160 targets, 111 receptions, just over 1,200 yards receiving, and 9 touchdowns. So what do you guys think? Even with the loss of Hill, do you think their additions will be able to not only fill in the gap, but possibly surpass the production that they have had previously?
I'm gonna let Armin go first.
All right. So their biggest loss was Tyreek Hill, and that is a huge loss to try and make up for. And I think Zach worded this really well with the sum of their parts, and that is how you replace that production of Tyreek Hill. Is it's not with one guy, it's with multiple guys. And because you are replacing them with multiple guys that are talented, it makes it harder on the defense to really know who is going to be the guy any given week. And that's what I'm seeing with looking at those three starting receivers in Juju, Hardman, and MVS, is that it's going to be tough to really know who Patrick Mahomes is going to be wanting to target. And then you throw in a little bit of Sky Moore and a guy I really like that is a dark horse candidate here, Justin Ross. They picked him up. I believe they signed him as a free agent after the draft.
UDFA.
But at one point before he had his spinal surgery, he was touted as a first round talent in the NFL. And he is a first round talent. No one's ever played or come back from this injury and played in the NFL before. Not because it's such a bad thing. It was fused spines in his neck, but it doesn't happen that often. So we don't know. We've never had the opportunity to see that. So it's just unknown waters that Kansas City is going in with him. So they got 5 good receivers, not to mention Josh Gordon. If he can play, he could be a talent as well. And then teams, I said at the beginning, they won't know which receiver Mahomes is going for. Well, they're going to be trying to take out Travis Kelce then, and that means more room for those receivers to do their work.
Well, that list you just gave me was like the island of misfit toys. You piece together 5 piles of crap. It doesn't matter. Still a pile of crap. Tyreek Hill is definitely one of the best football players, or one of the best wide receivers in the game. And he's also one of the fastest football players in the game. So all the guys you listed off, MVS maybe not as much as the others, but Sky Moore has been touted as an underneath route runner with quick hands, slant type player. We've seen enough seasons of Juju Smith-Schuster to know that he is an underneath slant type, quick hit wide receiver. Travis Kelce is not a field stretcher. He is the secondary option underneath routes. So you are lacking in that offense somebody that is able to take the top off to stretch out the defenses. So without that capability, teams are able to cheat and come underneath. All you have is an assortment of maybe washed up or unproven talent that really comes together on underneath routes. So that means teams are going to be very aggressive and you'll be able to jump those routes. It's going to be tougher for guys like Travis Kelce because you don't have the field stretcher to open up that space for you to find. Like he's one of the best tight ends in the game. He is a Hall of Famer, and he just has a way of getting open. When the play breaks down, he finds that spot, but you don't have time to find those spots if the play breaks down because you don't have the open space in the field. So that's my one argument, number one. You need somebody to take the top off. That's a legitimate threat to be able to give you those quick hitter underneath type routes to be able to stretch those defenses out. And we've seen that defenses in the past against Kansas City have had to be really creative because they have to run those 2 over top on Tyreek because he could take it to the house at any moment. My secondary argument is, right now in fantasy football, look, especially we're starting to get close to redraft here, everybody is down on Patrick Mahomes. Okay, Patrick Mahomes last year finished as quarterback number 4. He also finished as quarterback number 4 on yards passed. So if you are saying that you are in on the passing offense of the Kansas City Chiefs, then you also have to be in on Patrick Mahomes. But we just finished doing our fantasy feud, and coming back from the judgment of a lot of our fans that they did not believe that Patrick Mahomes was going to be a top end quarterback. the range was between quarterback 3, and I think it was to even outside the top 7. So if you're in on the Kansas City passing options, that means you're in on Patrick Mahomes. And we're seeing the trends, especially in best ball right now, where Patrick Mahomes has been a historical second round, maybe towards the early third round draft pick, where now he's slipping into the 4th, maybe even 5th or later round in single quarterback redraft. So that means as a community, most people are out on the passing offense of the Kansas City Chiefs, other than Travis Kelce, because he is a substantial difference maker at the position. Now, Travis Kelce is Travis Kelce. There's no arguing that. But there's a reason when you look at the remaining options that there is no guy being highly drafted in that regard. So that's my counter argument to Armand.
All right, both of you guys raised really good points. Armand, you raised all the points that I would have raised myself. But I do appreciate what you said, Jordan, about the community itself being down on Patrick Mahomes, and how if you are down on Patrick Mahomes, you in turn are likely down on the passing options. But I think for me, at least, 2 names really stand out in terms of being contributors to the Kansas City offense. One of them has been somebody that I believe a lot of people have forgotten about, and another one is somebody that not many people know of at all. The one that many people have forgotten about is Juju Smith. He missed almost all of, if not all of, last season. But in 2020, he had just shy of 100 receptions, 831 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He is somebody that has shown over the course of his career, well, maybe not a elite dynamic wide receiver 1, he does have the capacity, the capability of being a team's 1A or 1B. 1B to Travis Kelce, who is the 1A there in Kansas City, is not a bad spot for Juju to be in. He doesn't have somebody like Antonio Brown to really occupy defenses, but I think in that position, he will still be in a spot where he's able to put up similar numbers to what he did in 2020. Somebody that I think a lot of people don't know about is Sky Moore, coming out of Central or Western Michigan. Coming from the MAC, a school, Michigan there, that's produced several wide receivers in the past couple of years. And I believe Sky Moore has big play potential out of the slot. Does any of that information possibly change either of your minds on this?
It doesn't change much, but I will give the 2 cents that out of the names that have been provided, I think Juju Smith-Schuster is one of the ones that I am interested in, just strictly based on ADP. If he's kind of sliding down the board a little bit, he does have significant upside, and somebody is, well, you would hope one person's going to step up. My concern is that it's going to be a sprinkle effect. So for fantasy wise, that maybe, you might not be as interested, other than, like I mentioned, Travis Kelce. But looking at ADP right now, we have, I just scrolled too far. Juju Smith-Schuster is the first one out of the cluster as wide receiver. It's listed half-point PPR as wide receiver 36, overall 82 in ADP right now. Then sliding down to wide receiver 53 and 130 off the board is MVS. And then even further down is Sky Moore at 61 and 175 overall. So I think that is probably the order that they will be drafted. Obviously, that's at ADP right now, predominantly best ball. Juju is a guy that I think I would be a little bit more interested in because he is a possessional guy. He's very like, Deontay Johnson type, where he's going to, if you're in PPR or half point PPR formats, he's going to nickel and dime you enough to be great. But I just don't see that significant upside like I would have had like a guy like Tyreek, where that would have really, really excited me about this passing offense. So I still think I'm a little bit stubborn in where I was at, but I do agree with you, the fact that if there is somebody I'm going to take a gamble on, I do think it would be Juju Smith-Schuster, as the fact that, I tried trading for him in the offseason from you in Dynasty. So you have that inside information beforehand.
All right. I'm going to have my rebuttal here. So Jordan, you said there's nobody to take the top off the defense like Tyreek Hill. And you know what? He is the best at taking the top off the defense. There's no denying that. But that doesn't mean that you can't have other players available that can take the top off the defense. And Hardman and MVS are both 4.3 40-yard runners. They're both really fast. So instead of just having one guy that can take it off, defenses don't know who's going to be the deep threat each play.
I think my actual words was a serious threat over the top, because both of the guys you just listed have good speed, but are also historical dropsies.
Well, I mean, let the defense test them then, and if they get the catch, then they know they have to cover them more, right?
You can get Zach's dog to run a 42. Just because the dog's fast doesn't mean he's going to catch the football.
Hey, you got to honor him at least with somebody on him, right? It means that you can stretch the field still. They can still stretch the field. And it sounds like Patrick Mahomes is a good deal at his ADP then. I don't think any of them are going to perform as well as Tyreek Hill. Like, none of them are going to put up the same fantasy points and the yardages as Tyreek Hill. But the big thing is that those three wide receivers as a sum are going to be better than the passing attack from Kansas City last year. So the three receivers, or four, or whatever, how many deep you want to go in their depth chart, were last year. And after Tyreek Hill, and I know this is again hurting Hardman here, there wasn't a whole lot of offense going on. But we know Juju can put up yardage, and Hardman and MVS can surprise teams here and there too, right? So I'm still in on it. And when you don't know who's going to be the best wide receiver, like I was saying at the beginning, and you did talk about this too, is teams are going to key in on Kelsey there and take away that underneath stuff on him, and it's going to be easier if there's no Hill taking the top off as much. But then if teams are gambling that way, then I really think that with two guys that are burners, you will have the option to get the ball down the field. And Mahomes is accurate enough to at least put the ball into those guys' hands, and hope they catch it.
I maybe would have bought into the argument a little bit more if you went anywhere other than McCole Hardman as 83 targets and 59 receptions in 17 games last season. So you kind of lost me a little bit there when you're putting your eggs in the Hardman basket. But
they're not all in the Hardman basket.
Oh man, Hardman is what a disappointment he was. They thought they were drafting him to replace Tyreek a few years back, and oh boy. But what you want to share your thoughts there, Zach, before we move on to the next one?
I got to go with Armand. Like, almost everything he said would have been in my argument. Like, I think we've all said it, but I'll say it myself. Nobody on this list is going to replace Tyreek Hill and what he brought to this offense. It'd be very hard pressed to find anybody in the NFL that could replicate what Tyreek Hill has meant to this offense. But I think by their sum of their parts, they will be a more well-balanced offense. I don't have any stats to back this up, but being the Chiefs, they were on prime time quite a bit the past several years. So I've watched a number of their games, and it seems like a few times a game, Mahomes just rips it deep from his asshole and just, Tyreek Hill, he's down there somewhere and just hopes,
Yep.
Because who else do they have to threaten the defense with outside of him and Kelsey? Now they have, three players that have started, big games in the NFL. Even though, maybe Hardman isn't a dependable guy, but he is somebody that has played in big games. MVS has been Rodgers, number 2 receiver for a number of years. And Juju has played in some big games with the Steelers. And I think Sky Moore, if he wins that slot job and pushes Juju to the outside, watch out for Sky Moore. The sky's the limit. The past grown the past couple of years, rookie receivers that have played out of the slot, Waddle, 62%, Elijah Moore, 35%, Justin Jefferson, 32%, CD Lamb, 32%. All of them played predominantly out of the slot, and they all had really big rookie seasons. And I think that could be similar production for Sky Moore if he is out of the slot at least a third of the time, like those four guys were.
Couldn't let that sky's the limit joke go over out there. That was pretty good. One of those. I hope Sky Moore doesn't win that job right away, because I do think Juju's going to be more effective out of the slot. That's where he was more effective when he was with Pittsburgh as well. But it's hard. And the one thing to consider before we move on here is we have not seen an offensive scheme where they've had to create this offensive mindset and an offensive playbook with Patrick Mahomes and without Tyreek Hill. We have not seen that yet. So, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is so far right now, if his career ended right now on the trajectory it's on, he's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. Like, he's very, very good, and he's very, very creative, and obviously have a creative mindset with Andy Reid there as well too. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do this. Are they going to be a continuation of same and just plug and play, or is it going to be a totally new scheme? So that's, we haven't seen it yet, right? So we could argue as much as we want. Like I said, we're not replacing him, and we all agree you're not replacing him. But how creative is Andy Reid going to get to be able to get that ball into the various hands that we're arguing here? So I'll end it on that one, I guess. But the last one we hear is Armin's take here, and then we'll wrap her up with a hot take.
All right. So mine was more, they kind of had to choose their own adventure almost. There were 2,000-yard receivers from last year that are very similar to each other. And by new, I mean this was the first time they hit that 1,000-yard mark. And I'm wondering from you two guys, which one of them is the real deal and which one is the pretender? So who's going to be the repeatable? Because that's in fantasy what we want, right? We want to be able to see that repeatable production year after year. And we don't want to see a guy that's yinging and yanging or has one good season and then is done. So Mike Williams and Hollywood Brown. I wanted to bring in Michael Pittman on this one, but I couldn't find a good comparable for him. That was because in my mind, Pittman is a pretty good lock as a good receiver in the NFL that's going to be able to be sustained success. So I couldn't find a guy that I thought was a breakout from last year that was similar to him. So instead, it's Williams and Brown.
You want to go first, Zach, or you want me to go first?
I can go first.
Sure, go ahead.
Alrighty. So I will preface this by saying that I believe both of these guys will be, or can be, and will be repeat members of the 1,000-yard club. I think they're both really ascending talents in this league. But I am most excited for Marquise Hollywood Brown. Last season, he had career highs in targets, 146, and receptions, 91, as well as receiving yards with 1,008. Coincidentally, though, the fewest touchdowns of his season, or of his career. During the NFL draft in April, he was traded from Baltimore to Arizona, where he was reunited with his college quarterback, Kyler Murray. Brown went from one mobile, at times run-first quarterback to another. So I don't believe the quarterback change is going to be overly dramatic. But I will say the receiving room in Arizona is going to look a lot different this year than it has in the past. Christian Kirk is gone, and so are his 103 targets and 77 receptions and 982 receiving yards. And DeAndre Hopkins will be gone for 6 games to start the season, which means there is a strong likelihood that Kyler Murray is going to be leaning on his old buddy from Oklahoma, at least early on in the season, which will get them off to a hot start, which I believe will continue throughout the year.
My favorite part of what you said, Zach, is that you think both these guys are going to be 1,000-yarder guys. Because I couldn't agree more with you. They're like, if this is one of those ones like your keep trade cut type question, it's gonna be like, oh well, this is gonna be a hard one, I think. But I'll preface my counter argument with the fact that I'd be very, very pleased to have either one of them on my team. But the one I want to talk about obviously was Mike Williams, and I was very fortunate that I did get him. I have him in a couple dynasty positions, and I'm very happy to have him moving forward here because this would have been a totally different conversation if he would have re-signed somewhere else. He was a free agent going into this offseason. He signed and stayed with the Los Angeles Chargers. And you've already heard my position on what I think of the Chargers going forward this year because of my love for Justin Herbert and the fact that I think he's going to be QB1 on the season. And to be QB1 on the season means it's going to have a big year for his offensive weapons as well. So I'm really high on Mike Williams. I'm even high on, well, actually, there's a lot of auxiliary pieces in that offense. Even, let's say I think there's a little bit of a butter zone where you can even get a tight end sleeper in there too, just because I think this offense is something you want to be a part of. The fact they gamble on fourth down consistently, that's more offensive snaps that their team's going to get in comparison to other teams. So even just like little nuances that are going to help you as a fantasy manager as well. So looking at some of his statistics, this was one of his first seasons where he was majority healthy. Mike Williams is a type of guy that will climb the ladder to get the ball, but is the reverse of a cat. He does not land on his feet. You'll see many a times where he's coming down and he'll land on his back or his head or it's like awkwardly on his shoulder. So he has been known to miss time just because of these awkward falls. So, but this past season, he has, I think, taken over the wide receiver one, if not before they were 1A, 1B. I think he is now the A and not the B of Keenan Allen. You've seen in the past where Keenan Allen was the possession guy, the go-to, and Mike Williams was maybe the field stretcher, the big play type guy. And he still is a big play guy, but he's starting to see more and more targets and more receptions. This last year was his significantly biggest year, not only for target base, but also receptions as well. Last year, he had 129 targets for 76 receptions in 16 games, where the next closest would have been 2019 when he had 90 targets, and in 2020 he had 85. So that's just from that other pinnacle of 90, you're looking at, well, just about 40, I guess be 39 reception or 39 target difference, which is pretty substantial. 76 receptions, and he had just about 1,500 yards on those said receptions. So health is one big thing that you have to be a little bit concerned about. Mike Williams, you could lose him at any moment just because of those big catches. But the thing I like about Mike Williams as well is he is a guy that will win you the week, no problems. There'll be a time where he might get you those 2 or 3 points, and you're going to feel the effects of that a little bit. But at the same time, he's also a guy that can put up 35, 40 points in a week and single-handedly win you that week. So if I'm talking right now, it's drafting season for us in best ball leagues. Like this, you're playing in best ball leagues. This is kind of that time you're doing the drafts before your main leagues are starting up. And Mike Williams is the type of guy that in a best ball format, I want on my team in every single format. We haven't really talked about it much, but Scotty Fishbowl coming up right away here. Actually, listener, and he was on the pod last week there. Josh Lilly actually got the invitation to be in the actual Scott Fish number 12. So he's pretty pumped about that. But that's a guy that I'd be going all in for sure on my team because he's going to single-handedly win you that week in best ball. If he has a bad week, he's on your bench. He puts up 40 points, he's plugged into your starting lineup. So, and he's on a good offense. I've already talked about Justin Herbert and my love for him. But I kind of, maybe that's where I'll kind of leave it at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of why I chose both of them, is what you mentioned with the injury, right? Both these guys have had trouble staying healthy, staying on the field, but they're both big plays waiting to happen, can win you a week single-handedly with how explosive they are offensively. So they're very similar athletes, and it'd be nice to see both of them reach that 1,000 yards. But it's also in the realm of possibility that they don't. Jordan, does Mike Williams' age concern you at all, considering he is, I think, 2 or 3 years older than Hollywood?
Yeah, he's 27 years old, which I'm not too concerned about, because if you're thinking from a dynasty platform or dynasty perspective, you're seeing a lot of these wide receivers excel still late into their career. You're seeing guys that are 29, 30, 31. Heck, you're even seeing guys that are 33 years old be successful. That Mike Williams unlikely at 33, so he can be successful just because of the type of player he is. He's a contested catch type guy. He can take the top off. So he's not, the crisp route runner that's still going to be successful late in life. He's not like we talked about maybe earlier, Juju Smith-Schuster. He's a guy that I can see having a long career because he's those quick hitters and he is a very, very good route runner. Where these big body contested catch guys, they're eventually you get older and young guys are going to be able to jump you. So, but I do think as a dynasty league, you're still probably going to get a good 3, maybe 4 years if you're lucky out of Mike Williams. And he's kind of just getting to that point where you're kind of getting to the peaks. A lot of these wide receivers you see kind of hit their stride around, and like maybe some of their best years they'll have around that 27, 28. Some of them even 29. You're seeing that kind of that little butter zone. Especially like tight ends, you see a lot of them kind of get so big body type guys. You see a lot of that success later in their career as well. But Mike Williams wasn't a guy that he wasn't a bad receiver and all of a sudden figured it out. He was first round pick, 7th overall, coming out of Clemson, and he had success early on. His second year in the league, he ended up having 10 touchdowns in 2018. So he found success early, but then just the injury bug got him. So I think he's a guy that. Dynasty-wise, obviously, you're looking to win a championship. Age, yeah, you got to factor that in consideration, but it's not like he's going to be out of the league in 2 years. So that, I guess, that would be my rebuttal, I guess, to the age. I mean, obviously, always younger is better in dynasty, right? You're going to have him for more years, but it's not like he's Julio or like I'm trying to think of somebody else that's like right on the cusp of just coming out of the league. Julio, he's done. He was right on that brink. But I still think Mike Williams has got a lot of good years in front of him.
I actually have to make one correction here, and sorry I made this mistake, but Mike Williams did have 1,000-yard season in 2019. It was 1,001 yards.
Yeah.
But yeah, Zach, do you have anything to add about Brown or concerns about Williams at all?
So I have owned both of these players in fantasy football. And this offseason, I actually traded Mike Williams away in a rookie draft. My main concern with Mike Williams is the volatility in his week-to-week production. And that's not to say that Marquise Brown doesn't have volatile weeks, because he certainly does. But there would be weeks where Mike Williams would put up 18 points and you're thinking, okay, here we go. Next week, 18 points. Okay, yeah. This is like, let's make this a thing. And he puts up 30 points and you're thinking, holy mackerel, I found the gold mine. And then he follows it up with like 1.5 points and you're just like, holy smokes, what happened? So like there's weeks with Mike Williams where you're going to get those middle of the road, like those 18, 19 point weeks that are just peachy keen. There's going to be a few big weeks where he's getting like 12, 13% of his overall production on the season in like week 3, where you better start him because that's where like 13% of his production is coming from. And then there's going to be weeks where he gets like 1.5 points. Like he caught a ball and he fell forward for a yard. Like, congratulations.
Yeah.
Like, so there's going to be weeks where he absolutely wins the weeks, and there's going to be weeks where he burns you bad. And like you said, Jor, with the best ball, he is made for best ball. But you could obviously turn around and make the same argument right away here for Hollywood Brown, where he puts up a couple 13, 14, 15s, and then he falls on like a 3.5 week. So both these guys are volatile. And I think when you become a manager for these guys, that's kind of what you go into that knowing that you're just going to have to ride the wave. And some weeks it's a boom and some weeks it's a bust.
Piece of like, I just got a helpful piece of advice, I suppose. These are both the guys, obviously, you're not relying on to be your wide receiver ones, right? They're, like Zach mentioned, they're boomer bust type guys. So when you're going into your draft, if these are guys that you're really interested in acquiring and you want them on your team, you got to really pair them up with somebody that's going to like yin and yang, right? You got to have somebody that's the reliable, steady Eddie type guy. Like I'm thinking like guys earlier before him that are like the Mike Evans, the Stephon Diggs, even guys,
Devontae Adams.
Yeah, like you got to kind of pay up to get somebody like him. But those are the guys that, like they're very consistent. You know what you're getting week in, week out. But then you pair them with these big win, big week type guys. But like Zach said, you got to know there's some days where you're going to feel the pains of having them on your roster. But my one final comment, and then I guess Zach, I can't remember if you made this comment or not, but just with Brown being on a new offense, historically seen that wide receivers do struggle going to a new offense in the first season. But I'm curious to see how that's going to happen, because it might break the historical trend, because it's not like they don't have a connection, right? It's the same counter argument people are making about Devontae Adams going over to Vegas. They're quarterbacks that they've played with before in college. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic to see. Is it going to be a historical trend, or is the connection still going to be there?
And I'm actually kind of excited for it because, like we said, Lamar Jackson's a runner, and Kyler Murray, he runs more to pass than to actually run, and you get to see him throw the ball a little bit more and make those decisions a bit more. So I could see I would rather buy into Brown than Williams this year, to be honest, just because that higher ceiling in my mind from Murray. It could also be a lower floor.
The unknown. You know what you're getting with Williams, but do you know what you're getting with Brown? You know, it's are you a gambler, or are you staying at home and not going to the Nino?
I think we've seen that Kingsbury and Murray are able to incorporate a new receiver quite easily into their offense, like they did 2 or 3 years ago with Hopkins. I don't think Hopkins missed a beat when he came to Arizona, and I don't expect Brown to miss a beat either. I don't think anybody's fooling themselves and thinking the Arizona offense is a complicated offense. It's the same offense that Kingsbury ran at Texas Tech. It's a lot of check with me's. It's really easy stuff to read from the sideline, from my understanding. So I think this will be just A-okay for Marquise to ingratiate himself into the offense.
Yeah. Okay, so we're just wrapping up here. My hot take, I'm getting ready to go. It's a Baker Mayfield one. It actually timed up perfectly here, but we're just running a little bit long this week, so I'm just going to push mine into the upcoming one here in the 2 weeks from now, and we'll just give you guys a little bit of time. I told you how spicy it's going to be, so I'm just giving you some time to think about it and ponder for the next 2 weeks to see how spicy it actually is. So we're going to end now, and I'll push my hot take to the following week. You obviously got 3 hot takes in a row here from this past segment. So I guess that'll do it here, fellas. Anything to add before we shut her down for episode 52?
Hey, I hope you guys have a little burnt taste in your mouth from all these hot takes. It was a lot of fun. I know I'm sweating a little bit.
Right on. All right, well, fellas, I guess we will see you at the wedding. Hey, that's probably the next. Well, Armin, I'm sure I'll probably see you at the golf course here in the next couple days. I'm not sure I'll probably get out there, but it's going to be a big time. We'll have a lot of fun here in Prince Albert coming up. But everybody there, thanks for listening to episode number 52. Once again, big thanks to 22 Fresh, our major sponsor of the year. And don't forget to use the promo code checkout 306FFB15. And I guess on behalf of Zach, Armin, and myself of the 306 Fantasy Football team, take care, everybody, and let's talk soon.